Yeah, it seems to start with the fundamental belief, like the core belief of the people who adopt this movement is that work in a job, like to be employed, that this is an inherently bad thing that should be eradicated from your life as quickly as possible. And so, and again, so much of that, and I don't know, it seems to place leisure above all else in a lot of, and again, like you said, it's different. There's different brands of it, different flavors of it, but the fundamental kind of understanding, the fundamental belief is that working for somebody else, being employed by somebody else, this is a bad thing, and so we want to eradicate it from our lives as completely as possible, as quickly as possible.
Hey everybody, another episode of Business Lunch we want to welcome you to. I am your host, Roland Frasier, and my co-host, Ryan Deiss, is here too. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing exceptionally well, and I think today we're talking retirement. Is that right?
Yeah.
Grabbing that gold watch and riding off into the sunset. And I know it's something you and I have been looking forward to for a really long time.
That's just so not true. I like that. Yeah, it's really funny. I always get a kick when I read or hear people who are retiring at 25 and 30 years old, and because life is long, and I guess it's just how you define retire. To me, the traditional definition is I'm leaving my job. I'm not going to work anymore. If you stop working at one job and that was your kind of main gig, even whether you're 20, 30, 50, 60, 80, it doesn't matter. But if you are continuing to be in the workforce at all, to me, in my definition, you're not retired. Clearly, for a lot of people, retired means leaving whatever they're doing right now or whatever they have had to do to earn a living, which I think if you are doing something that you don't love for a living, then absolutely it makes sense to figure out how can I stop doing that and have enough money to survive and do things that I want to do. And I think you and I have had a talk about this before. To me, I kind of define it as if you can make money doing something you would otherwise do for free, even if it didn't pay you, then that's the ultimate thing. That's the holy grail of work. You agree with that?
Of course. And so what we're talking about, I guess just to kind of set it up, we're talking about this whole FIRE movement, right? You kind of want to set that up, like what is FIRE?
Yeah, financially independent, retire early. Financial independence, retire early. So FIRE, which is not at all a new concept. People have been trying to do that forever. But if you put the word FIRE behind it, and then it can become a movement, which it has, and it's something that a lot of people are trying to do. And there's different iterations of it. There's regular FIRE. Then there's lean FIRE. We're basically going to starve ourselves. I would probably call that hellfire. And then there is the one where you are still living pretty large, but putting a bit of your income away. They call that fat FIRE. So I think it's kind of interesting because what the whole thing boils down to is save as much as you possibly can, throw the savings into diversified index funds, and then do side hustles. And then the level of how penurious you want to be, like how frugal am I going to be? How much am I going to cut my expenses to effectively defer gratification by not spending money on things right now that I otherwise might? And also, and I think this is key, and this is to me a very smart part of this, defer major life events that are going to be very costly. So having children would be a big one. It could be getting married, but getting married might give you two incomes and help you get fired faster. So I think that it's cool to think about that even in the FIRE movement, there's a spectrum from we're really, really, really going to challenge ourselves and live ultra lean, all the way to maybe one of the people that I was reading a thing about is living off of about $250,000 a year. Which was 50% of a 500K income. So that's cool. I think if you look at classics like The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason, that says take 70% of your income and live off of that, save 10%, do fun things with 10%, and give 10% to charity. those are all kinds of things to think about. But generally, the concept is that they want to get out of having to work, and particularly having to work in the job that they don't love, as fast as possible. Is that kind of your take on it as well?
Yeah, it seems to start with the fundamental like belief, like the core belief of the people who adopt this movement is that work in a job, like to be employed, that this is an inherently bad thing that should be eradicated from your life as quickly as possible. And so, and again, so much of that, and I don't know, it seems to place leisure above all else in a lot of it. And
Well,
again, like you said, it's different. There's different brands of it, different flavors of it. But the fundamental kind of like understanding, the fundamental belief is that working for somebody else, being employed by somebody else, this is a bad thing, and so we want to eradicate it from our lives as completely as possible, as quickly as possible.
yeah, I think the other interesting thing is that there are people that said, like a few of the interviews that I've seen are somebody that they never got to see their parents, and their parents worked all the time, and they were, they never really had any money, and they've decided that with their kids they want to be there, and so they wanted to, prior to having the kids, they wanted to get in a place where they wouldn't have to be in a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 9 job, and that they could actually take the time to have a rich family life. Obviously, what we teach with Scalable is that if you have a business and you get people to run it and you've got the right systems, then you can have it all, right? And,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of the challenge that I have with Fire is this too, is I've seen far too many people who deferred gratification, and a life event happened, family illness, personal illness and health, disability, death, bankruptcy, economy collapsing, you can, name it, theft, and one of my ones I just heard that I couldn't even believe when I was reading a book about the synthesizer guy that I like, is that he had somebody that was going to invest in his company, which was going to totally save him, and put the deal together and everything. And the investor was a very, very wealthy person who didn't trust the government, and so had all of their wealth, $125 million, in bearer bonds. Bearer bonds
Oof.
are generally owned by whoever holds them. They were deposited in the World Trade Center.
Oh
The
no.
day that the planes hit the World Trade Center, 911, the courier who was supposed to pick them up to put them on a plane to London to go get the financing facility with them as collateral was late getting to the building. Good for the courier because the courier lived. Bad for $125 million of assets that literally went up in smoke, right? So, like, you talk about anything can happen. Anything can happen. So, to me, this complete starve yourself of joyful uses of money to get to some place where you feel that you now are free is very often illusory, because things come along. Life doesn't have a plan like your plan always, and so I think that's something to be careful. So that's a philosophical bias that I have.
Well, similarly, like when you think about kids, I mean, we've had friends, and my heart goes out to them. My heart goes out to anybody listening to this right now who's in this situation where they wanted to wait to have kids until they were more financially, ready. And by the time that came around in their mind, they might have been financially ready, but they weren't biologically as ready as they were before. And now they're needing to basically spend all this money in, additional fertility treatments that have wiped out all the savings that they had built up. That
Oh,
if they'd had the kids before. And again, this is not again, my heart goes out to him. I don't want to make it come off at all like I'm like blaming them for anything. I think everybody's making the best decisions that they can. And it's of course a balance. I've also had friends who they went out there and bought, Lamborghinis because they had a good year, second homes because they just thought that the ride would never end. And they wound up having to, sell those at the worst possible time and lose lots of money. It's hard, but I think if you just adopt the mindset of we're not going to do this thing until we have the money, you need to know that that just default setting isn't perfect in and of itself. My wife and I were having this conversation while we were, together in Europe, because we were gone for a bit. We're gone long enough that we actually started to miss our kids, which takes about like a week or so. With 4 kids, like we're usually happy to like get a little bit of break, but we were now, and we were just talking about how, because we have a beach house, as I know you know, and when we bought that beach house, it was a stretch. Like somebody on paper could make the argument that this is maybe not the best financial situation. We had enough of the down payment and things like that, but it was definitely, a stretch. I'm so glad that we did it, because we've had so many amazing memories there with the kids that had we waited until we were quote unquote ready, we would have missed out on. Now, we would have had plenty of other things, and so that's fine. But if you just say, we're not going to do any of this stuff until we are quote unquote retired, you run the risk of life happening, you run the risk of it happening longer than you thought, and you run the risk of missing out on a lot of pretty cool things along the way. And it's the default setting to me of I can't have both. And I think that's what irks me the most. Like, so what would you say if somebody, one of your boys, right, comes to you and is like, yeah, I'm going to be, we're doing this fire thing. What would you say to them? What would your advice be if somebody that you knew and trusted, young person, young couple, said that they were going to go all in on the fire movement? What would you say to them? What questions would you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say that's awesome. What is it that appeals to you about that? And then listen to what they said. I have learned that it is very important to support first.